What's going on, guys? I'm Eric with Airsoft.
I'm Ross.
And today we're actually doing a video testing the different temperatures of green gas and CO2.
Yeah, we'll be taking a look at how green gas reacts in different environments, whether it is freezing cold or really warm, and then comparing that a little bit to CO2.
We're using 3 different kinds of magazines today. We're going to use one that was in the freezer, one that's in regular temperature, which we have in front of us in a case. The third sitting in front of a space heater right now to warm it up.
Yeah, so today we'll be using the VFC Glock 17. We have 3 brand new gas mags and 3 kind of older CO2 mags, but we expect to see less difference with the CO2. We are running with Elite Force green gas, which we have held at 5 seconds consistently across all of the mags, and Umarex CO2 12-gram cartridges, as well as the high-power Airsoft HPA 2.5 BBs. We'll be chronoing with 2.5s, and then we'll throw up the conversions for 2s and 3.2s up on the screen when we chrono those. But just keep in mind that with gas output, sometimes you'll have joule creep between BB weights depending on well, your gas output, which we're gonna find out today how much that is.
Absolutely.
The last thing to kind of recognize is the fact that we have stored our green gas, our BBs, our CO2, and the replica itself in room temperature environments. So depending on if your replica is as cold as your magazines are, you could have bucking issues. But we're not really looking at the internals of the replica, we're looking at how the actual magazines function with their gas in them.
What do you think is going to happen, Ross?
Well, I think that across the board, it's a pretty known fact that green gas underperforms in colder temperatures. I know plenty of people will put hot hands in their plate carriers to warm up magazines and stuff like that on the field. So I'm really just interested to see how much that performance is actually hindered by cold weather.
Yeah, I mean, if I have any predictions, and having ran gas blowback stuff before, I'm going to assume the ones in the freezer are probably not going to even cycle or blow the gas. So without further ado, let's get down to it.
So we're going to be starting off first here with the room temperature magazines. This is more of a standard, if anything. This is how it would normally perform in most environments when you're playing. Okay, so that was our room temperature magazines. Something I found interesting off the bat, just based off of that test alone, is the fact that the CO2 mags were firing about 50 FPS higher than the green gas mags were consistently.
Yeah, I think the CO2 was going to be more consistent than the green gas. It's just a much more surefire way to run a gas gun. The FPS is going to be so much more consistent throughout the mag, as well as performing better in most environments. Especially colder ones.
Yeah, so I mean, we were hitting a pretty good average, about 250 with the green gas mag, and we were hitting closer to 300, 310 with the CO2 mag. So field legal for CQB, either way you go, you're gonna be getting a little bit more pressure on that CO2. But overall, I mean, functioned great, snappy, reliable, how you would expect your VFC Glock to perform.
So the next thing we're gonna move to is our freezing mags. We're gonna pull them right out of the freezer. All right, so we're gonna go take a look in the freezer, grab our mags out. All righty, we got them. We're gonna head back to the range.
Okay, so we just grabbed our 2 gas mags. Something to keep in mind with these frozen ones is that they were gassed prior to being put into the freezer. So that would be as if you gassed them before a game. They're sitting on your battle belt plate carrier, anything like that, and they're just getting cold while you're outside.
Yeah, absolutely. There we go.
Yeah. Oh,
There we go.
that's surprising.
So, as we just saw, a whole host of issues with the frozen mags. Obviously, these are much colder than most outdoor environments you'll probably encounter in Airsoft, but it was more of a stress test. The main issue was those O-rings. Those O-rings shrink in the cold, and they're just gonna let that gas spew out the top, and it won't be able to hold anything, unfortunately. So that will probably be your biggest issue running them in the cold, being the shrinkage of the O-rings.
Yeah, so when your O-rings shrink, obviously it's gonna just let that gas escape, and then you're not gonna have nearly as much pressure behind your BB. That being said, I mean, consistently, I think we were seeing about 180 FPS with the green gas mag, and the CO2 mag, the O-rings on this failed actually much faster than I was expecting. I'll say I was expecting the CO2 to hold up a lot better, and it made it through less shots. And I mean, the FPS was a bit higher than the green gas, kind of like what we saw in the room temperature test. However, obviously it failed much faster. So, I mean, cold weather with green gas mags, it just doesn't mix right.
I think the CO2 obviously operates at a higher PSI, so it's gonna perform a lot better than green gas in the cold. So be it, those O-rings don't fail. So, food for thought. We'll move on to those hot mags here just in a second. Alrighty, so we're just gonna go ahead and grab our mags from in front of our little space heater here. Nice and warm, ready to go. Back to the range. So we have our mags that were sitting in front of our space heater for the last half an hour. Obviously, if it was a mag, if you're playing Airsoft on a 90-degree day somewhere warm during the summer, it would probably have a better effect on the mags and have them shoot hotter. But this is probably as good as we're gonna get in Pennsylvania in December. So let's test our last mags. Well, as you can see, the warm mags did perform the best with the most consistency and the highest FPS. Being able to use warm mags in warmer facilities or environments is going to give you the best performance possible with a green gas mag. CO2, on the other hand, was still shooting higher than all the other counterparts, just a little bit snappier and shooting with a little bit more consistency.
Yeah, so I think across the board, you're gonna have better luck with CO2 depending on any environment. I mean, the main thing we saw with the cold weather test was that O-ring failure. If you don't want to run CO2 mags or you can't get them for your replica and you run green gas is obviously perfectly fine in room temperature to hot temperatures. When you get to those freezing temps, now we did an extreme stress test on these freezing temps.
I think our predictions will reign true here. The coldest mags are going to have the least consistency and the lowest FPS, and the O-rings will probably fail at some point as it gets colder. The room temperature mags perform just fine for your indoor airsoft arenas during the winter, especially up here north where it's going to be really cold anyway. And then your warm mags for warm gameplay shoot hot and much more consistent. Make sure you do your research before running a gas blowback gun. They can be finicky in the wrong settings, but also a lot of fun. They'll give you the most realism with felt recoil and blowback most of the time. They're awesome, they're fun to run.
Yeah, so just keep in mind when going, especially to your local CQB fields, a lot of gas guns sometimes operate right on that FPS limit, and if it's a hot day out, you could be right over that limit. Or vice versa, if it's freezing cold, you might not be able to run that gun on that field. It's just something to keep in mind. We wanted to kind of take a look at this for ourselves and see the actual difference between the weather conditions of green gas mags. It's something that a lot of people, especially if you run green gas powered replicas, know that it's a problem, but to what severity is it an issue? And I think we discovered today that if you're in really cold environments, it is a pretty big issue. I mean, it's detrimental to running your replica.
And if you're hell-bent on running green gas, or CO2 for that matter, the best thing you can do is try your best to keep it warm. Yeah. Like Ross said, hand warmers, keep them in a warm car right before you play, or even keep them in your pockets if they're insulated. That'll help, but at the same time, cold temperatures will probably beat you.
Let us know if you guys want to see any other tests, things like this. We think it's very interesting to look at, the extremes of airsoft and, what environments they can function under. We'd love to take a look more at the science side of how these things function and the best way to get your replica to function on the field.
If you want to know any more about the science behind it, we actually have a blog concurrent with this video on the Amped Airsoft official website. Go check that out. read a little bit more about what you can do to mitigate some of the temperature flaws or benefits with gas mags. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.